My testimony today is the fact that Megan killed her kids and killed herself.
Family annihilator and horrible human being Anthony Todt has filed a federal lawsuit against the Florida prison system where he is currently located for violating his rights and his due to process. Let's talk about it.
Jury has unanimously determined, after listening to the evidence presented, that you, Anthony John Todt, are a destroyer of worlds, that you destroyed the world of your 4-year-old daughter, Zoe Elizabeth Todt, that you destroyed the world of your 10-year-old son, Tyler John Todt, that you destroyed the world of your 13-year-old son, Alexander John Todt, that you destroyed the world of your wife, Megan Denise Todt. The jury has unanimously determined that you murdered each of them with premeditation based on the evidence presented in this room. As to count 1, first-degree murder of Zoe Elizabeth Todt, you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As to count 2, for the premeditated murder of your son, Alexander John Todt, you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As to count 3, for the premeditated murder of your son, Tyler John Todt, you are sentenced to life in prison. As to count 4, for the premeditated murder of your wife, Megan Denise Todt, you are sentenced to life in prison. Not one of those lives was less valuable than the others. Those sentences will be imposed consecutively. You will be adjudicated guilty as to each count. For the murder of the family dog, you are adjudicated guilty and sentenced to the maximum sentence consecutive, which is 1 year in the county jail. You will get credit for any time that you have already served. Madam Clerk.
819 days.
Any costs will be reduced to judgment. The court will order restitution.
Welcome back. Welcome. Let's jump right into this story about Anthony Todt, convicted murderer, who instead of going away forever is still somehow making headlines from behind the bars. So according to Newsweek, a convicted murderer who killed his family and their dog has filed a federal lawsuit against the Florida jail where he was held, alleging the unauthorized release of a personal letter to his estranged father. Anthony Todt, 48, was convicted in 2022 for the murders of his wife, Megan, 42, his children, Alec, 13, Tyler, 11, and Zoe, 4, along with their dog, Breezy, in their home in Celebration, Florida. The brutal killings in December 2019 drew national attention, partly because Todt's father had attempted to have his own wife murdered when Todt was a child. She survived the attack witnessed by 4-year-old Todt. Wow. The lawsuit centers on a 27-page letter Todt wrote to his father in June 2022. Jail officials had scanned the letter for illicit content before mailing it. The Orlando Sentinel obtained a copy through a public records request and published its contents, in which, like previous times before, Todt blamed his wife for the murders. The article goes on to read in quotes, "Long story short, she gave them the Benadryl, Tylenol PM pie, separated them, woke up at 11:30 p.m., stabbed them, and then suffocated each one," Todt wrote. "At the news of this, I ran to the bathroom and puked. I was weak." The lawsuit claims that the release of the letter violated his due process rights and constituted an unlawful search and seizure. He alleges that the jail seized the letter without a court order and that prosecutors tipped off the reporters about it. The suit names Osceola County Sheriff's Office and the then Sheriff Russell Gibson and other officials. In court, jurors viewed video evidence of Todt confessing to the murders and detailing his failed suicide attempts while living with the corpses. He admitted to holding a pillow on his daughter's face for 10 to 15 minutes. Todt had described how he and his wife planned the murders, believing an apocalypse was imminent. He admitted to suffocating his children and dog, and then his wife after her suicide attempt failed. But Todt later recanted this confession in his letter, claiming his wife was solely responsible for the deaths. Law enforcement discovered Todt and the bodies of his family on January 13, 2020. Todt confessed to the murders on January 13th and 15th, but his subsequent letter presented a different account. He professed his innocence, criticized media coverage, and expressed intentions to file lawsuits and start a nonprofit in his family's memory. The agencies and individuals named in Todt's lawsuit have yet to respond publicly. The lawsuit adds another layer of complexity to a case already marked by its disturbing details and shifting stories. Speaking of shifting stories, the nerve of this guy to still blame Megan for such a horrible crime against her own children after the evidence was overwhelming showing that he was guilty. It's just horrendous, and it speaks totally to his character. If you aren't familiar with the case, Anthony was a prominent physical therapist who was under investigation for physical therapy fraud. It was rumored at the time that Anthony annihilated his whole family to avoid embarrassment and prison time. Fast forward, the 48-year-old Todt is now representing himself in the federal civil lawsuit that he recently filed, and he's suing authorities for a whopping $9.9 million, accusing them of illegally going through his jailhouse mail, then releasing it to the media. Apparently, at the time that Anthony wrote the letter to his father, Robert Todt, who was convicted in 1981 of attempting to murder Anthony's mother, where Anthony heard and saw the attack, but his mother ended up surviving the shooting and divorced his father later. But Anthony was on a psychiatric hold and wrote the letter to his father and asked him to strictly keep it in confidence. Anthony in the letter made claims that his case was highly publicized and of tabloid interest. Now here's the plot twist. FBI regulations and those of the U.S. Postmaster General have both confirmed that once a letter is sealed and stamped, the letter is under the jurisdiction of the United States Postal Service and cannot be opened, especially without a warrant or a subpoena, according to Anthony's lawsuit. The Sheriff's Department has yet to release any information regarding Anthony's $9.9 million lawsuit. So, what are your thoughts? Are federal laws and policies in place behind prison bars? Do they apply to inmates? Are since inmates are property of the state, do the same rules apply? And does Anthony actually have a leg to stand on? Leave your thoughts below. I would love to hear what you think about this whopping $9.9 million lawsuit filed by Anthony Todt behind bars.